Now, here's one aspect of Higgins at the time that I think is very few people know about, and it's just shocking to me. Back in 2013, we know that Higgins was in touch with someone named Matthew Van Dyke. Matthew Van Dyke is a self-described Christian mercenary who has been active in war zones from Libya to Syria, and around the world. And he runs this hustle where people pay him to like raise private armies to fight fights. And somehow when he was captured, I believe in Syria, his family claimed that he was he was held by Libyan government forces in 2011. And he was running around there with two characters, Steven Sotloff and who's the other one who was beheaded by ISIS, who became like this major figure triggering the attack on ISIS.
James Foley.
Yeah. Sorry?
James Foley?
Yeah.
Horrific news, the new and gruesome video appearing to show a second American hostage executed by terrorists from ISIS. This time, American journalist Steven Sotloff, just 31 years old, and it comes just 2 weeks after another American, James Foley, lost his life.
U.S. officials said today Steven Sotloff never had a chance once the 31-year-old American journalist was in the hands of the brutal ISIS group. ISIS said it killed Sotloff because of President Obama's decision to continue the U.S. bombing of ISIS targets in Iraq.
I'm back, Obama.
The hooded executioner appeared to be the same British-accented speaker who 2 weeks ago beheaded journalist James Foley.
You have been at the forefront of the aggression towards the Islamic State.
Investigators are already comparing the voices from the two ISIS videos.
He was riding around with them in his Jeep, taking them around Libya. Very suspicious stuff. I'll get more into that. And he was captured by Libyan forces. His family portrayed him as a combatant, as a journalist when he was in fact a combatant. And even the Columbia Journalism Review weighed in and said this is actually putting journalists in danger to cast mercenaries as journalists to elicit public sympathy.
After graduating from Georgetown with a master's degree in security studies, I got a motorcycle and set off for North Africa and the Middle East to make a documentary film. During my motorcycle travels, I'd made really good friends in Libya that I kept in contact with over the years. They had friends, neighbors, family members being arrested or killed. So I went and I joined the revolution as a rebel fighter. I was wounded and knocked unconscious and woke up in prison. I spent nearly 6 months as a prisoner of war in two of Libya's worst prisons. I was basically waiting each day. Would I be executed? Would I be tortured? Would I be put on trial? One day there was a lot of noise outside my cell. At first I thought that these were guards that were coming to kill me. And I'd already suffered so many months. I was ready for it, but it was a prison break. So I grabbed my stuff and we went out and escaped from the prison. After escaping prison, I decided not to return to the United States and to instead go back to the front line and continue serving in the revolution and fighting on the front lines until the war was won.
In any case, Higgins was in touch with this mercenary, possible spook figure who was involved in so many regime change efforts back in 2013. And something called the Syrian Electronic Army managed to get their communications. I think it must have been because they fished Van Dyke on Facebook, and these were Facebook chats. And basically, at one point, what takes place is that Van Dyke he's been embedded with Jabhat al-Nusra, which was the Syrian wing of Al-Qaeda. And he starts telling his pals that Jabhat al-Nusra has sarin, that they have chemical weapons. This is before the Ghouta attack. Let's take a look. These are some of the chats that I tweeted at Higgins because he was like attacking me for going on CGTN, the Chinese state network, that like all kinds of think tankers go on there, but he thought, it was evil that I went on there. And I said, now that he's here, what's up with these 2013 chats between him and mercenary spook Van Dyke? Why did he agree to keep his pal's disclosure about Nusra's sarin off the record? I'll assume these are authentic until he says otherwise. He didn't say otherwise. He said nothing. Let's look at these chats. This is so shocking. Van Dyke to Higgins, don't rule out the possibility that the rebels do have a small quantity of chemical weapons. I've had information for a few months on this. This is off the record. I am telling you, since you've done so much good work in this field, you have a right to know about the likelihood. And then Higgins agrees to keep off the record that an inside source who's been embedded with those rebels has chemical weapons right before a chemical weapons attack that takes place in rebel-held territory that he is reporting or analyzing.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And this is the reality that Eliot Higgins has helped to cover up, which is he knows that insurgents in Syria, supported by the West, have chemical weapons. And that's actually among the revelations that came out in Seymour Hersh's reporting, that there was Pentagon documents extensively about how Al-Qaeda in Syria had an extensive sarin production cell, sarin, which was used in the Ghouta attack in 2013. And all that was known. It was discussed. It was heavily circulated inside the intelligence community. Everybody knew it, but everybody covered it up because they wanted to blame the Syrian government, even though they knew the Syrian government had no incentive to use chemical weapons. The only incentive to use chemical weapons came when Obama laid down the red line and said, this is the one condition under which I would launch a military strike. So as a former U.S. Middle East ambassador told Charles Glass of Harper's Magazine a few years ago, the red flag was an open invitation. Sorry, the red line was an open invitation to a false flag. Yeah,
That's such a key quote. Basically, you're incentivizing a false flag attack. Now here's May 8th, 2013. I don't have this to put on screen right now, but I'll just read some highlights of it. Matthew Van Dyke, mercenary, apparent spook, to Eliot Higgins. I mean, I just can't believe this stuff. Higgins had already agreed to a code of omerta to silence about the armed opposition possessing chemical weapons. And then Van Dyke says to him, I'm just telling you so that you'll keep an open mind about these incidents and not have anything come totally unexpected to you in the future about chemical weapons use in Syria. So he's basically saying there's going to be a chemical weapons attack, and keep an open mind because it could come from the rebels themselves. And then Higgins says, I'll keep an eye out then. Van Dyke, you didn't hear any of this from me. Okay, understood, says Higgins. Okay. I'm not going to let that. I'm not going to let that. I'm not even going to talk about it on background. And then Van Dyke says, you can privately discuss it with other journalists, I suppose, and tell them what I told you. And he says, I'm just telling journalists so they're prepared for the possibility of gas exposure if they work in the Aleppo area, which is controlled then by Nusra. So foreshadowing chemical attacks, Higgins knows all about it, agrees to silence, and goes forward and on every major chemical incident, points the finger at the Syrian government to stimulate public support for regime change over the red line. I mean, these have been tweeted about, reported at the time, but I think they're so relevant right now that Bellingcat has become what it is, which is just like this major juggernaut, quote unquote, intel by proxy.
At least 1,000 victims, many of them women and children, are reported dead in a possible chemical weapons attack, this time near Damascus, raising questions once more about President Barack Obama's red line.
One of the first images that emerged from Ghouta is a video showing a room full of children dead, many of them in their pajamas, without a single injury on their bodies. And immediately we knew that this was a crime of a completely different magnitude.
Bullshit.
Bullshit. You're talking bullshit.